Thank you guys all for being here. Appreciate you so much. My name is Gary Meek. I have been in real estate for about 22 years, and I've always found like niches that work really well for me. So I've done REOs, done short sales, done lease options, and about a year and a half ago, I started doing some research into a guy named Pace Morby. From him, got to Subject To, got to Co-Living, and then I actually got to watch Pace Morby live in March of this year. After that event, we came back and Barry and I kind of started chit-chatting a little bit, and we got into co-living. Barry and I have known each other for 10-ish years.
10 years probably, yeah.
And so we both had this desire to get into co-living, and so Barry's gonna actually share with you guys a little bit more about that and dive into it for you. Thanks for being here.
Having Gary involved has been really great. I've never really had a partner to work with, and so Gary, with this project, has been able to bring some things to the table just in our discussions that mean so much to be able to have a brain to talk against, right? To talk with. We both look at things a little bit differently, and you'll see some of those differences as we go through. But that's been really great to be able to have Gary as a sounding board and to be able to give me more advice. He's got executive level experience with corporate 500 companies, and so that different outlook on life, different experiences definitely adds a lot. In my opinion, it adds a lot, and I think it's going to be the key to the success is having both of our strengths working on canceling out our weaknesses. And Gary's wife is here, so thank you for coming out. We appreciate having you here. She knows that even someone as great as Gary does have some weaknesses. My wife is not here, so I remain perfect. So co-living. We've already introduced ourselves. I won't spend much time on here. I would tell you, though, that Gary is a leader of a large real estate team. I've been involved in investment real estate for quite some time, and so our experiences over the decades are being brought to this venture, and we hope to be able to pass some knowledge around and help us make less mistakes along the way. We both are looking at the market, though, and we see some trends that are really causing us some concern. You know, everybody sees this trend. The inflation is really on rampant, and it has caused a lot of problems. You got food costs going up, you got electricity going up, all the utilities. It seems like every year they're doing another rate increase for electric. Shelter, housing costs are up. I think these numbers for housing costs are even actually a little low. They've gone up quite a bit just in the last, since 23. Since 23, when these numbers came out, everything has increased even more dramatically. Cars are expensive, and traveling, everything has cost a lot. We also are in a time of great tax regulation, and it almost feels like an attack on wealth. It almost feels like if you have something, there's somebody out there that wants to take it from you. And so I don't know exactly how to describe that. It's not like a war on wealth, but it feels like it on some days, especially with the taxes. We need to keep our eye out on trends. One of the national trends that we're seeing that's not so much a cause of concern, but it is a trend that we're seeing is residents over 65 are going to make up 22% of the population by 2040. We all have one thing in common. We're all getting a little bit older. So that's something that's true. On a national level, we're seeing these trends. Then on the local trends, we're seeing it probably even more so in California. Residents 65 and up make 15% of the population now, and that's going to grow to 20%, almost 1% a year. That's a whole lot of seniors that are going to need housing. And one of the things I think that gets overlooked is 33% of those will likely be women living alone. This is something that we see play out with life choices and just the experiences of life. Men, there's a pretty good chance we're going to die quicker. And depending on, women in the workforce, depends on what their level of comfort with numbers and their level of comfort with providing income. They tend to run a little lower on their income, the women that are being left alone. We see the fixed incomes. They're not trending, even though some of them are having cost of living adjustments, they're not actually trending in a direction that will cover more of life expenses. Even where they're going up, they're probably not going up high enough to make a difference. We see that the average per capita income in Sacramento County is only $34.99. Average Social Security payment for a retired person, only $19.20. That's not a lot of money. Hopefully you've got some other income to go with that. So when we get out and we look at people, how are they living? Where are they living? Well, typically on top of whatever your rent is, you're going to have an additional burden on top of that. From electricity, utilities, internet, trash, sundries. So the things that you do on top of your rent are being played out, and we average about $430 a month. In some people that's higher, in others it might be a little bit less. So when you look at our local rents here, 95628, that is Fair Oaks, I believe, right? And that one, the rent for a 1-bedroom is $1,535 a month. That was the lowest 1-bedroom we could find advertised. When you add in that additional cost, you're looking at $1,935, and then your renting by the room is $1,161 if we can rent it by the room. And so if you don't know, that's what we're fixing to get into, is renting things by the room. And so where we derived these numbers was just doing this math where we're taking what's the average advertised 1-bedroom, 1-bath, add in that burden cost, and on top of that burden cost, let's see if we can save some money and still make our numbers work as an investment. Our demographic that we're looking at 1 to 2 person rental households earning less than $35,000. That's a lot of them in the U.S. About a third of the households in the U.S. earn less than $35,000. And in California, medium studio in Sacramento, around $1,300. 3 times the qualification, you'd have to make $46,000. So you can immediately see a problem coming in. You're either going to have more people in the household, more income coming in from working multiple jobs, or you're going to have to find some housing that's subpar. In Sacramento itself, we have 526,000 in the city, so about 500,000 people. 42% of those are married, another 14% living with someone. Under 18, those aren't really our target demographic. That's another 20%, which leaves us with about 21% as a target that we're looking for in order to advertise our units to. That's 112,000 people. We don't think we're going to fill that market in any time soon. When you look at co-living, you ask, well, why do co-living? What does it offer that other opportunities don't already offer? Well, it combines high returns with social impact. So those people that are demographics, they need this solution. And we have some that are transitional youth, some workers, engaged workers. One of the properties you're going to see later is a property out in Natomas, right near the warehouse for Amazon. And those workers don't make a lot of money, but they make enough to make our houses work. Stable seniors. You've got seniors that are looking for houses. This is one area that Gary and his foundation are really big on. They really want to move the needle and help some seniors. This is an urban affordability crisis that is really coming up. We're seeing homelessness. The amount it takes to go from having a home to not having a home is less than it's ever been before. Just one good punch on the back, or you push them over with a feather, just about. The straw that broke a camel's back. All right, and flexible living situations. Everybody's on the move. Everybody's got their different things. So let's jump right into it. Have any of you heard of co-living before you came here? Okay. So co-living is having a house and shared common area, sharing some amenities within the house, sharing some of the expenses, and then creating some sense of shared community as well. How does this differ from traditional real estate? Well, with traditional real estate, you would have a house, in this case a 5-bedroom, 2-bath house in Citrus Heights, and the 30-year loan on that property at a 7% rate is going to be $4,300 a month. That's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And that's a lot of money for this property, but this is a big property, right? It's a lot of house, 5 bedrooms. Well, sometimes when you're renting a property out like this, you'll have a single tenant, and that single tenant might slow pay or no pay, where you're missing rents. You may have vacancies for an extended period of time. And then if you're renting it out, your survey for this property was only at $3,300 a month. So you're really going to lose some money. You're losing $1,000 a month. Now, you might say, well, you're losing money, but you're making it up over here. Well, I'd rather just not lose the money in the first place. Thanks anyway. Now, if we take that same property, move it as an expert co-living home, we fund it, it's in escrow. And this particular home is not in escrow now, but it was in escrow. 6-bedroom, 2-bath becomes an 8-bedroom, 3-bath. And the projected return on that property was around 33%. So how do we do that? Instead of selling the whole pizza, we sell the pizza by the slice. And this is going to be a quick example of what we're doing. I want to show you, and then we'll walk into one specifically that we're doing right now. How do we do co-living? Our co-living model runs on a 3-legged platform, if you want to call it that. So we have 3 different LLCs involved. We have investors have an LLC, and those investors are people like you that have invested money into the project. And then we have the operating LLC. That's pretty much me and Gary and our teams. That's Expert Co-Living. And then we have the member LLC. And the member is, when we say member LLC, we're talking about the tenants. In reality, though, we rent to a single tenant, and that single tenant is the member LLC. That gives us some things that you wouldn't normally get There's some liability protection that comes along with that. They have to get through that maze of LLCs, so to speak, in order to get to you. And so they really can't get to you because you're in an investor LLC that is blocked off from the rest of the things. The only thing they're going to get to is the operating LLC, which is us.
So what is member LLC? Is like all the people living in the...
Yeah, so the member LLC is, think of the tenants, except in reality, each individual tenant is not your tenant. Each individual tenant is a member of the LLC. We control the LLC and who becomes members and who doesn't become members. But it gives you a better way of understanding it if you can see there's an investor LLC, an operating LLC, and then the tenant or member LLC. What's going to attract people to this? Well, turnkey units. These are fully furnished when they move in. They actually cannot bring their furniture with them. We control the furniture just like a hotel would. You don't see people moving into the Marriott and bringing their mattress with them. That doesn't happen. Shared resources, so you're not going to have to spend as much money because some of the resources will already be there. You don't have to go buy a living room suite. It's already there. You're going to have some sundries provided. Built-in services, you don't have to go get your own cable, your power, your water. All of those things are already built in. And Wi-Fi is already built in. And some community engagement. I mean, these are not party houses. We're not trying to replicate, a college dorm. But at the same time, it would be nice for you to speak to a human. Do you realize right now some in the senior communities might go days or weeks without talking to another human, right? In real life. Because if their kids aren't in the area or their kids have passed on, if they're by themselves or in some cases have special needs, it might be a while. So this creates some sense of community. Why is this profitable? Well, because there's going to be very high demand. There already is very high demand. These whole houses usually rent up completely within about 8 weeks. So once they come on the market, you're renting the entire place up that fast and you're diversified very well. Almost like an apartment building, all your units don't go empty. It'd be surprising to ever have 2 units empty at the same time once you stabilize the property. The other thing, this is an inflation-adjusted market. So we respond even faster because our rents are set on a monthly basis and then down to a weekly basis. Once they've moved in, then we can adjust to that inflation very quickly. We don't have to wait a full year even. Regular rentals are inflation adjusted because they can go up at the next rental market. Ours are even more so. And predictable positive financials. Once you get your financials stabilized, you can really predict it way out into the future. It works like an apartment complex in that sense because those pro formas can be relied upon. Whereas with single family, you never really know that one vacancy is going to knock you off your numbers. How do we make our pizza? Well, we take these ingredients and we mix them all together until we get a flavor we like. So these are some of the types of ingredients. These aren't exact numbers yet. We will get to exact numbers. But just to give you an idea of one of the projects we were looking at, purchase price $549,000. We're going to have to do some construction when we get into this property. We'll show you what type of construction we're doing for that property at $32,000. Furnishing costs. You got to buy all those beds. You got to buy those couches. You want to have reserves. One of the number one reasons why real estate investors, probably the number one reason why real estate investors get in trouble is they don't have enough reserves. So we're constantly building in reserves into our models. Closing costs, those are going to happen when we purchase the property. So if you add all your out-of-pocket costs, there you are with that money. So those are all your ingredients. And then it's all about the sauce. If you are any kind of pizza lover, you know that the majority of the flavor comes from the sauce, right? The sauce is the base of it all. We're mixing this one up. Every project's going to have different numbers, right? Typical numbers are down payment, loan amount, principal and interest amount, the operating expense. Notice that the principal and interest is separate from the operating expense. The operating expense includes your taxes and insurance, whereas the principal and interest is separate out of that. When you combine all those expenses together, you're at $7,132. And then your scheduled revenue for that project with 8 bedrooms was $9,000. You'd have monthly net operating income of $1,960. These aren't completely foreign numbers. Kind of understand how's that go through. Now you talk about the operating expenses. These are the types of operating expenses you would have. Property management, both the people side and the property side. You've got taxes, insurance, vacancies, utilities, cable. So a lot of different things that you would expect to go into it. Cleaning. These properties get cleaned every 2 weeks by outside cleaners. And landscaping, we get that done. Everything to do with the property is taken care of for the tenants. The tenants show up. This is a place for them to eat, a place for them to sleep, a place for them to go to work, to and fro. It's not a place that they're going to have to be doing these things. Management means that all of this stuff is done for you. when I say for you, I mean the operating LLC takes care of all of these items for the investing LLC. So the operating LLC is Expert Co-Living. We take care of marketing, member screening, managing the members once they get into the property, collecting those payments, and then onboarding them and giving them a good experience as they're coming in. Some of the things that we provide, even that, are some medical telehealth. We find that one reason why people at this income level don't go to work is because they get sick. If you can get them to talk to a nurse, they might not get sick as long, they won't miss work, they won't miss your payments. So at a national level, we've gotten some processes that help this process go smoother. And then it also means that taking care of the property, maintenance, cleaning, turnovers, landscaping, handling the legal liability when that comes up, all of that is done for you as well. So you're being able to come in as a member of the Investor LLC and receive these benefits because the operating LLC is doing the work for you and making sure it gets done. Any questions on that so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
As far as, understanding who is going to be moving in when you guys do your background checks and everything, and let's say you do one home, are you looking for a certain criteria for that specific home? Meaning, like, are you mixing young teenagers, or not teenagers, but let's say kids in their 20s with elderly women?
Yeah.
And, how are you, because if you think about the community in that, and there's some different diversities there that could create conflict. So how does that work? Is there like a specific thing that you have there?
So there is some self-selection in that process.
Okay.
The house rules tend to segregate the house by itself,
Okay.
right? So I assure you that my son, Andrew, doesn't really want to live in the same house with a bunch of grannies.
Right.
Right? So there's some self-selection that goes on in that process. However, if he needs a house and this is available, we're probably going to let him rent. We're probably not going to exclude him. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, we can designate some properties just for seniors. We'll probably hold off on that until we start to see problems develop, and then maybe do that. The law will allow us to do that, especially with the senior class.
Right.
Yes?
We had a question already about if you'll have mixed gender, would be co-ed, would you think? Co-ed. Yeah, because
The answer is yes.
okay, because as a woman, I wouldn't want to live with somebody.
Same.
Then you wouldn't rent there.
I get it, but are you going to have an opportunity?
For all women?
Yeah.
So once you get a house established, then the members of that house can have more input into that. But this is where the balance between for-profit and for-cause comes into play. Until we get it up and running, we'll take the rent, please. But yes, what we'll do is we'll deal with problems as they arise. That was a common misconception across the country as this started to spread. This has been this is in 28, 29 major states. You're going to see more of it here in Sacramento very soon. And there's 30,000 homes and doors involved, units involved. And so this is something that we've already seen a pattern. One of the thoughts people had was that it would really be a problem if you mix sexes. And they found that it really wasn't. Most of the people using these spaces are not in the stage of life where they cause those kind of problems, but you will still have some. And yes, I do get what you're saying. We can adapt that. We have some control over who comes in and out, but I probably wouldn't want to do it until I'd fill the unit up. Yeah.
Barry, could you talk a little bit about the legal liabilities and give us some more explanation around that? Does that mean like if someone slips and falls and gets hurt on the property and they're part of the member LLC and they try to sue the operating LLC?
Yeah, so
How do you protect us?
for the investors, you're going to be in another LLC, not in the operating LLC. So the operating LLC would take that hit, not the investor LLC. So that's that answer. You're already protected because you're not in this operating LLC. The operating LLC is also protected because of the member LLC. The member LLC is the first line that's going to take that hit. Does that make sense? So they'd have to be suing themselves because they're members of the LLC.
Isn't that covered in the rental insurance?
And that's the second part of it is we have about 3 layers of insurance on top of that. Every home has that problem, not just co-living. So it's the same tools that are used in every other home to protect you from that.
When
Yeah.
there's time, I wanted to ask about the telehealth. Is there a
Yeah.
certain national plan like Amazon, or are you?
There is.
Okay.
I don't know the name of it, but it is a national plan and it basically just built into the price. And it's not that much when they rolled it out across 30,000 members. You're able to get some cost of savings there.
So this it be like on top of their Medicare or Medicaid or?
It's not a big thing. It's just a nurse line you can call and talk to.
Okay.
So they've just found that it helps. That's one of the things that we've done. We found that it helps. So before I go on, I talked to a lot of different people, and they all have different ideas of what investing is and how to talk about investing and how to measure an investing and what makes a good investment. So what I've found as I go through these presentations is that I need to take a little bit of a 5-minute break and just kind of run through how we look at what an investment is in real estate. You guys okay with that? For some of you, I know there's some agents in the room. Some of you, this will be old hat. For others, even some of the agents, you may not fully have understood how to use some of these numbers, okay? There's 5 forms of return of investment in real estate, and we're just gonna run through it quickly. I do want you to stop me if you're not following it, because they all it's math and they all build on each other. Invested amount, if you put $250,000 in, and we're going to just say that the total invested amount is $250,000, but you're only putting in $100,000, right? Other people are going to invest, so just like in this room, let's say you put in $100,000 and then you put in 50 and you put in 50, so others invest 150 and one person puts in 100. You're going to receive $10,000 back on that money. If you get $10,000, you invested $100,000, then you made a 10% cash on cash return. Everybody with me on that? We'll call that your cash flow, right? Return on investment from cash flow. And so if everybody gets that, you got 10, they got 15, the total is 25, your return on investment is 10%. So just to make sure you're understanding that, before I go further, what you're doing is you're taking the $25,000 and dividing it into the $250,000 that you invested. That's what's giving you your 10% cash flow. Real simple math, everybody's easy to get that. The math doesn't get harder, it just doesn't use even numbers anymore. Now what you've got is you've got a loan payment. Everybody knows what a loan payment is. It consists of 4 things usually, but we're going to only talk about 2 of them in this, the principal and the interest. And if you've got a loan payment of $3,500, then your principal is most likely going to be around $1,050 a month, and $2,450 is going to be going to your interest. Basically, it breaks down in the first couple of years as about a 30-70, right? 30% going towards the principal, 70% going towards the interest. Gets a little better as you move on in life. And that's going to be something we talk about later when we see not at a 30-year, but a 24-year. The 24-year, more of the money is going towards the principal than is going towards the interest, right? So the amount of your annual, $12,000 going towards your principal, $29,000 going towards your interest. Everybody following that? What happens is, as your loan is being paid by your tenants, they're reducing the balance on that loan. So you're getting $12,600 a year going towards your loan. So your equity is growing, not necessarily from the appreciation yet, but it's growing equity because your loan balance is coming down. So they're paying you to live in your house, and they're paying off your loan $12,600. When I divide the $12,600 divided by 250, it's actually backwards on the chart. Sorry about that. So $12,600 divided by 250,000 gives me a 5% return. So we got a 10% return from cash flow and a 5% return from debt pay down. So now we're at a 15% return. Anybody know what's funny about the number 15 as far as percentage returns? So there's a rule of 72. You ever heard of the rule of 72? If you divide 15, Andrew, can you do this? Divide 15 into 72. 15 divided by 72. I'm sorry, 72 divided by 15. I did it backwards. 4.8. So any number divided by 72 tells you how long it will take to double the money. So $250,000 invested will double if it earns 15%. It will double in 4.8 years. So that's the rule of 72. So at 15%, you double your money every 5 years. Now we're going to do the same thing. This is the third return on investment, and this is your interest deduction. In a business, if I buy business cards for my real estate business, that's a deductible item. If I'm getting a loan on a rental property, the interest that I have is deductible because it's a business expense, right? It is also a way to subsidize housing in America, which we do. And so if I take that same chart, I look at my payment, $2,450 is interest, that's $29,400. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the interest paid by your tax bracket. The interest deduction is a funny one because it's worth something different to me, who is a pauper, compared to Gary, who has just stacks of money sitting around everywhere. So because Gary is in a higher tax bracket, the interest deduction is actually worth more to him than it is to me. So at about $197,000, $200,000 worth of income, you're going to see a single person be in a 32% tax bracket, right? So what that means is I'm going to take that $29,400, multiply it by 32, and the value of deduction for that person in that 32% tax bracket is $9,400. So on your taxes, as long as you have, and this is a crucial point, as long as you have other income to claim it against, you can deduct $9,400 against your income. Everybody with me how we got there? A little bit more math, but it doesn't get too complicated. By the way, what did that give us? Value of deduction divided by 250,000 gives us a 3.76% return. Okay? See how we're stacking it up? So now we're at 18. Go ahead.
Can we all take the deduction off the 250 even though we didn't put it in 250?
That's a great question. And that's why I started it out in the beginning about one person investing one amount. That's a great question. You get a prorated share of that deduction. So if you put in 50, if you put in half, you'd get half the deduction. If you put in, does that make sense? It's worth the same amount percentage-wise, but it's just prorated to your amount. You're going to get a 3.76 return on the amount that you put in. So this is our return on investment from depreciation. This is one that trips up real estate agents all the time. Sales price, $600,000. Now, on a $600,000 property, you have some amount of that property that is considered the value of the land, and another amount of that property is considered the value of the improvements that were built on the land. This building is an improvement on this land. That land over there has no building. That's not worth as much as this because this has a building, right? The general rule is 80-20. You're going to generally say that the land value is around 20% and the improvements are around 80% of the value. So when we take a look at that, we divide the improvement amount by 27.5. Why did we pick 27.5? Because the IRS told us to. And as a general rule, don't get in an argument with the IRS. The IRS has two numbers. One is for commercial property, which is 39, I believe. I believe it's 39 years. And the other one is 27.5. What they're basically saying is your improvements, once they're put on the land, are now starting to depreciate. Just like your car, when you drive it off the lot, when it's a brand new car, starts to depreciate that day, right? And so they say 27 and a half years, your property is going to be worth nothing. Now, as investors, we laugh. We know that's not true. It's, again, is even a bigger way that they subsidize the building of housing because they want you to make improvements to land, and that's how the government modifies your behavior, for lack of a better term, is by subsidizing the things they want. So what we do, take the $480,000, divide it by 27.5, you get the $17,454.54, and you multiply that times your 32% or whatever your number was. Then you come back with the value of that at $5,585. What did you do in order to get that $5,585? You invested $250,000. Divide that, there's your percentage, is 2.23. Doesn't sound like much, but we were at 18.7. Now we're at 21%. And then we get the fun one. The fun one is appreciation. Appreciation is what everybody talks about. There's two things that all investors like: cash flow and appreciation. That's the two they know about. They forget about the other 10 or 12% in the middle. You invested $250,000. Your appraised value is $600,000. In California, over the last 30 years, the market's been 5.5% appreciation. Over the last 10 years, it's been 6.5. Over the last 5 years, it's been 7.5. You pick the number that makes you think you're going to be right. We used 4% because we're conservative, right? This comes in to really make a difference if you're thinking about leveraging. Remember earlier we talked about a down payment. Down payment's usually going to be 20. In our case, it's usually going to be at least 25%. So 25% down payment means you're leveraging your money times 4, right? If you're at 20%, you're leveraging it times 5. And so that really starts to play when you get into this appreciation. If you pick a high number here, it's going to skew your numbers. Now, they might come true. They have in the last few years, but we're going to use 4%. When we use 4%, we're going to say $24,000, which is the 4% times the value of the property, which is $600,000. And we expect that next year this property at $600,000 would sell for $624,000. And if it did, then we made $24,000 in equity against our $250,000, which is what it cost in order for us to do that. We earn 9.6%. Everybody get these concepts? They're not really challenging concepts. It's just if you don't go over them, then people are thinking different things. What they're not thinking about is they're going to get into an investment that's going to give them a 30% return. If I came to you and told you you're going to get a 30% return, most of you would say, he's a charlatan or he's committing fraud. How do I get a 30% return? Well, this is how. This is how the insurance company does it. This is how Warren Buffett does it when he takes his Geico money, and when you're not using it to make claims, he's doing this with your Geico money in an apartment building. And in the apartment building, that depreciation number gets really big. I've just kind of given you a concept, right? These numbers are actually larger, not smaller when you get into real life. In contract right now, this is a live property. From here on out, our numbers are going to be real numbers as best as we know them. This is a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom house, and it is over in Natomas, about as close to the airport as you could get, right? The freeway to 99. So this is right on the edge of where 80 turns up to 99, right? No, 5 turns up to 99, yeah. It's right in the armpit. If you look at this house, if you go to the right 5 houses, you'll have a road that opens up to the freeway.
Barry, do you have some measurable indicators that you use into which house that you're purchasing in which area? Is it specific on like, okay, we're gonna go next to an Amazon hub, okay, we're gonna go next to the airport? Is there specific areas that you are looking to purchase these homes in, to turn these models into?
Yes.
Okay.
And those are some of the ones you just mentioned. In co-living in general, what they're talking about is being near work centers, right?
Right.
You also could say near population centers, different types of housing, right? So we've had some opportunities come up that were just too far out. It's like, nope, that's too far away. This one is a little far away from where we're standing now, but it's perfectly positioned in the city of Sacramento. We like having a heavy population base, right? That heavy population base is what's given us the confidence that we're not going to have vacancies.
Do you have certain criteria that you abide by? Like this that has to be the minimum population, it has to be next to this many companies with this many employees. Do you have that specific criteria that you guys abide by?
There's nothing specific. We kind of know Sacramento,
Right.
and we know which parts of Sacramento have that, and so we're just looking in those areas. So usually what happens is one of the two of us will find the property. We'll start visiting the property. The other one will come and look at it. We'll look at demographics and rule out. Most of what we do is rule properties out.
Okay.
But then there's another thing that we're looking for just as much as that employment, that's parking. So parking is an issue for us.
Yeah,
We like that.
makes sense.
Okay? All right, so we're going to jump right into this one. Okay, so on this one, since we're on the subject of parking, you see that's a fairly small driveway. We're not getting 9 cars there. However, what you can't see is there's no house across the street. It's the side of a yard across the street, and that goes all the way down this way. You can park 8 cars on it. And then when you turn the corner, there's a whole side that's on the freeway side that you could park 20 cars on. So this one has excellent parking. We really like the parking here. That's one of the biggest things as far as neighborhoods we're looking for. We want it to be in high population areas, near employment, and with a lot of parking. This one is nicer than we expected to find. The interior of this, we're going to have to do nothing to the existing spaces that are being kept as they are. Here's a floor plan. This is more of what we're looking for. What do you see there? You see big open space, right? I love me some big open space, right? Because this is what we're going to turn it into. So we'll take that living room and put 2 bedrooms in there. And then we'll take the left-hand side of that garage, come through the wall, put another bedroom there. We're taking what was a half bath and turning it into a full bath. And so we're going to have a situation called 3-on-1. We have 3 bedrooms using 1 bathroom. And we like that ratio. We can go to 4, but we'd prefer to stay at 3-on-1. Do we get permits?
Yeah.
Yes, we get permits.
So you're taking one of the, like a living room or a family room, and you're converting it into bedrooms or a loft or something?
So in this case, there's the living room.
Okay.
And so the living room's there. Nothing in that living room. Nice big open living room.
Yeah.
And then we're going to convert it to
Okay.
those 2 bedrooms.
Those permanent walls?
Permanent walls, as permanent as I can make them. There's no wall that's permanent in my world. All walls can be removed. We'll address that in just a moment. I understand the question behind the question, and I'll address that. Another thing we did is we added in a laundry in the garage. So now we're going to have a laundry downstairs and a laundry upstairs. So that's kind of cool. Just gave us a lot of space. Really didn't have to do anything to the kitchen. Didn't have to do anything to the living room. Both of those are staying as they are. In the garage, what you don't see is that we'll have cabinets and storage. That's not drawn in there, but there'll be cabinets and storage there for everybody to have access to. So this is our existing upstairs. This is a 2,800 square foot house. And so again, we're looking for that. It's got 4 bedrooms, 2,800 square feet. Well, you automatically know it can have more bedrooms than that. So as we're targeting this, we see this open floor plan. Again, you've got a loft area there. We like that because we take that loft area, we turn it into another bedroom. So that loft area now becomes a bedroom. We leave the other 3 bedrooms alone. You notice we got rid of the master bedroom. No master bedroom, created a pretty good sized bedroom there at the corner, and then a nominal sized bedroom beside it. We also got rid of the access through the master bedroom to the bathroom. We knocked out a closet. So there was a closet on this slide in that same spot, and you can see the master bedroom access the master bath. So we took out that closet there and moved the vanities over to the right. Meanwhile, we took the space that was the master bedroom closet and turned it into a 4th bathroom. Little half bath there, 4th, it's got a shower. We believe that's going to go really handy with having 6 bedrooms up there. We were able to maintain our 3-on-1 and make that work out really well. So we have 3 bathrooms and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bedrooms. All of that costs money. We're going to spend some money. Purchase price on this property is $650,000. Construction costs will probably be around $60,000. Finished furnishing costs won't be that bad, but about $25,000 to $30,000. We think we've sourced some furnishing that's going to bring that cost down. We've got a reserve built in of around $15,000, and out-of-pocket cost going to be around $96,000. Our special sauce. Now, this special sauce gets really tasty. These are the good tomatoes, right? So in this case, with Gary's help, we were able to source this property using a, correct me if I'm wrong, it is a VA loan at what price?
4.6%.
So instead of a typical 7% rate, we're getting 4.6%, assuming a VA loan. And that VA loan, we're going to assume that loan amount. We're going to have principal and interest of $3,332, operating expense $4,700. So we're already, $1,000 less than we would be if we had a typical payment going on there. Our combined expenses of $8,000. Our revenue shooting through the roof at $10,130, giving a monthly NOI of $2,000 a month. My hat's off to you, Gary. Great job. So getting into the real numbers. So these are our projected rates of return. Remember we talked about the 5 rates of return? On cash flow, our required investment's $166,000. There are some things we're doing when we're assuming that loan that are basically going to add up to about $70,000. That $70,000 is being combined, $70,000 being combined with the $98,000 that we needed cash out of pocket in order to make this work. We have some reserves built in to cover the payment. This will take about 3 months for us to get up and running for the work that we're doing. We'd like to do it faster, but 3 months is probably realistic. Once we get up and running, we're going to have $24,000 a month from a year from cash flow, $11,000 from equity growth, depreciation at $16,000 value, and interest deduction of $8,900, return on investment of $26,000. Now, why are there 2 sets of returns? So I've always liked to have a little buffer. We've already raised $120,000 for this project. And so right now we're probably in a spot where we're willing to raise a little bit over the project just to make sure we have enough cost. If we were to fund it out, close out the funding at $200,000, the returns would be the ones on the right. If we wind up closing it out at $166,000, then returns will be the ones on the left. So I've given you both sets of returns so that you can see those. Now, how do we get paid? We're the sponsors, we're the operating entities, and so we take 15% of this project as an equity contribution. We have no plans of accessing that equity. We'll just leave that in the mix. We do this within an LLC. Both LLCs, all the LLCs have operating agreements on how they work, and we have operating agreements on how we work. We're coming into the project. We only want investors that are going to be in the project for 2 to 3 years. It's not something that we're wanting people to come in and out of. This is a 2 to 3 year hold. And why would you come out of it? The only reason you come out of something that's paying you 37% interest, that's a good thing. You're probably not coming out of that. And so the only reason you'd come out is if you had something in your family happen that caused you to come out. And we have some formulas within our LLC operating agreement that would allow you to do that. Go ahead.
Are they able to stay longer then?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have,
Like, you're done?
no, we're kind of the same way. We want to stay as long as we can, right? So we're investors just like you. We operate under the same rules of you as the investor LLC. So the operating LLC takes its equity ownership, and we're under the same rules the investor LLC are. If a dollar comes out, it comes out prorated to everybody. So anytime we take a draw, which every month you're going to get money coming out, it's coming out to everyone in the same pro rata share that they put it in.
HOA.
HOA? Yep.
So is there one at Greg Thatch, and how do they handle this proposal, or do they not know?
The HOA at Greg Thatch is a minimal HOA. So there's different types of HOAs. There's HOAs that maintain a presence. They usually will have a management company maintain that presence. In this case, that HOA is not here. The HOA here is for the infrastructure when they put it all in. And they do have an HOA, but it's one of those $80 a month thing, not a $300 a month thing. There's not a lot that they can do. There's a not negligible chance. So there's something bigger than zero chance that they could get every homeowner in the HOA community to vote and make a rule change, but they have not done so. We don't expect they would do so, and there's nothing within this that would cause them to do so. Even though you have 9 bedrooms going into the house, you only have one tenant. So you have one master tenant, 9 bedrooms. There's really not a lot of HOA can do about it.
The parking, Mike.
The parking is street parking already. Everybody in that community parks on the street. So again, it wouldn't be something that the homeowners would vote, because they would be voting against themselves to limit themselves. And again, all of this work is getting permitted. And so we're well within our boundaries. The city's approving it. I don't believe an HOA is going to be able to do that. Now, there are, again, the major types of HOAs that are maintaining a community, I would not do a co-living in. So I just wouldn't go into a $300 a full HOA. There is opportunity. We do have some members that have expressed interest in not being a member of the LLC, but still getting a return on an investment. And in that case, the equity co-living, me and Gary would be the ones that would be paying out a note. You can get an 18-month note at 11.5% interest. That saves us money. If we have to go to the market to borrow money, I will probably borrow money at 12.5 plus points. So 11.5 is still savings for us and for the community.